keep driving. I ain't making no money. I got family to take care of.
Coming up, the state of the trucking industry after Indianapolis-based Celadon's stunning bankruptcy filing and closure, leaving thousands without a job, stranding some on the road. The president of the Indiana Motor Truck Association is here with reaction to the impact in Indiana and beyond.
By measuring the force over the velocity, we can understand the strength of the concrete at a certain time.
Purdue University engineers have developed a sensor to deliver real-time data on concrete strength as it cures. How it could help the state and others save millions, and why those other states are taking notice. Plus,
we're just doing it in a bigger way. We're bringing hard tech to Indianapolis.
we'll take you inside the Heritage Group accelerator powered by Techstars, where next-generation companies from around the world are being mentored, supported to innovate and disrupt the status quo, some with plans to stay in Indiana. Details on those stories and much more ahead on this edition of Inside Indiana Business. Hello and welcome to Inside Indiana Business. I'm Gary Dick. The sudden news this week that Indianapolis-based Celadon Group had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and immediately shut down business operations left around 4,000 employees looking for a new job. That announcement being felt not only here in Indiana, but throughout the national trucking industry as well. It is an industry that has been dealing with a severe driver shortage for decades. Founded in 1985, Celadon grew into the largest provider of international truckload services in North America, with a fleet of 3,300 tractors, 10,000 trailers, and nearly 4,000 employees. With perspective on the impact of the announcement here in Indiana and beyond, pleased to be joined by Indiana Motor Truck Association President Gary Langston. As always, Gary, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
The news this week, there have been a lot of questions surrounding Celadon, certainly for a couple of years. But still, the news of the bankruptcy filing and immediate closure had to come as a shock to you and others in the industry.
It did. It, not a total surprise that it happened, but a surprise that it was so quick.
Mm-hmm. Number of factors being looked at. Certainly, there's some concern of a downturn in the economy, but in Celadon's case, a lot surrounding accounting irregularities and charges. The company ordered to pay $40+ million, I think the number was, in restitution to shareholders. A couple of former officers arrested. So it was a unique situation that doesn't really reflect necessarily on the state of the trucking industry.
No, not at all. That's not the way the trucking industry operates, but it certainly had an impact. I don't think that's the they were subject to all the same challenges of all other carriers as far as cost increases and the other things, but the legacy headwinds that they've been facing for the last couple of years have just been predominant.
Yeah, let's talk about the impact. First of all, in all, about 4,000 employees impacted, many of them drivers. There's a driver shortage that continues. Will these drivers find it difficult to find new employment?
Well, most of them won't. Because we do have a driver shortage. It's even surprising to us in the trucking industry to see the response from the other carriers, our carriers across the nation, who reached out immediately, not only at a altruistic level, but at a business level to be helpful here. And we immediately had a list of about 25 carriers that sent us their information and said, if there are drivers interested in what we have to offer, we would like to talk to them. So I don't believe the drivers, the mechanics, the dispatchers, the skilled positions will have much trouble finding work. It'll more than likely be the 400 or 500 back office people that it might take a little longer. Yeah,
Gary, talk about the impact in your view here in Indiana, then more broadly to the industry, because Celadon certainly was a major player that has impact on the national industry as well.
Sure. The freight's still there. It's just other people will be hauling it. It's an impact to Indiana. It's not a surprise that the company went out. The trucking industry's experienced that kind of activity over the last year. There were more failures in the first half of 2019 than there were in all of 18. So it's not a surprise that that happened, but it is an impact on Indiana. You know, as a big company that employed a lot of people, paid a lot of taxes here to the state. A lot of other businesses fed off of the fact that they were here. So those will all be impacted by their absence.
Yeah, you know, I could not help but think this week in covering this story of Steve Russell, the man who founded the company, started in New York, handpicked Indianapolis to come here and start and grow what became a billion-dollar company, gave back the community. Really tough to think about what he built, and now it's essentially
that might be one of the toughest parts. I was fortunate to know Steve and work with Steve the last decade, and he had his heart and soul here. Yep. He put everything he had into it, and you know, he used the name Celadon because he said it's the most beautiful name in the world that everybody remembers, and I don't like to think about how he would feel about that.
Yeah. 30 seconds left, Gary, but as you look at the state of the industry here and beyond going into next year, 2020, any big issues? The driver issue is one, but any other big issues?
Well, we're, you know, cost continues to increase. USMCA, good news on that in the last couple of days. So that will be helpful to our industry. We're still trying to balance the federal and state positions on the marijuana.
Yep.
And then technology, and finally infrastructure financing.
All right, Gary Langston, the Indiana Motor Truck Association president. Great perspective on the Celadon story. Thanks as always for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, Governor Eric Holcomb this week unveiled his 2020 Next Level agenda during a trip to Terre Haute. Among the governor's legislative and administrative priorities, expanding broadband connectivity throughout the state, raising the minimum age requirement for buying tobacco and e-cigarettes to 21, enacting legislation to curb distracted driving, and transforming the way the Indiana story is told, both inside and outside the state, to attract more jobs and investment. The governor's office suggests the 2020 agenda would save Hoosiers more than $125 million in borrowing costs by using $300 million in cash now to fund capital projects. Well, next, we've probably all witnessed this in our travels. The construction cones and crews are gone, but the project wrapped up, but the lanes aren't open. We'll show you how Purdue researchers are working to fix that problem and why it could save millions of dollars. It's time now to go inside innovation, brought to you by Allegion, pioneering safety. Well, sensors created by engineers and researchers at Purdue University could help the Indiana Department of Transportation save millions of dollars each year. The researchers are collecting data through the sensors to track concrete strength development in real time. Here now to explain how the sensors work and how a collaboration with the Federal Highway Administration on a nationwide study could help implement the technology in other states is Purdue Associate Professor Luna Liu. And Luna, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
This is really fascinating technology because it gets at an issue that I think most of us can relate to. You know, you're on the highway, you're on a road, you see the construction is essentially finished, but the road's not open. These sensors that you've developed and to put into concrete allows for real-time tracking of strength. Talk about how really the concept here and how these work.
So absolutely. We have been partnered with Indiana DOT and we developed this sensor. What happens is we directly convert mechanical properties such as strength into electrical signals so people can easily read it with real-time information. So therefore we can cut down the traffic. The engineers can decide when is the ideal time to open the traffic without delay. And they can decide when we're not open the traffic too early, so then you ended up frequently repair of the road throughout the year. So at the results, and can save millions of the dollars and cut down the traffic and also improve the job site safety.
What's the real key here? Is it the real-time nature of this? Is that what really solves the problem?
Right, correct. Because this real-time data can tell you when they reach to the adequate strength, so you can make a better decision.
Okay, you've got a partnership, I know, with the Indiana Department of Transportation that has been ongoing for some time now. Other states seem to be very interested in this technology as well.
Oh, absolutely. Since this summer, we started to implement this sensor in Indiana's 3 major interstate, 70, 74, and 465. So the other state has been very interested. And now Federal Highway Administration, it sponsored nationwide study. There are states from California, Texas, Missouri, and Kansas are planning to join along with Indiana. Some other states such as Louisiana and New York has shown their strong interest.
Yeah, so this technology, innovation from Purdue, indeed could go nationwide.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's on the way.
Yeah, and I should mention, and the timing is really good for this, for your appearance on the show, the Center for Intelligent Infrastructure, a brand new center that is just now launching at Purdue. This is the kind of technology that's going to come out of that center.
Oh, absolutely. So the mission of this center is to develop and deploy the technology such as this sensor to better communicate, let people communicate with our infrastructure, not only the road, but also the bridges, the airport, so our infrastructure can be more adaptive to the human needs.
Yeah. Amazing technology coming out of Purdue University, which could very much have national implications and implications for infrastructure. Luna Liu from Purdue, thanks for joining us. We look forward to following the story in the months and years ahead.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Well, coming up next, why tourism could be a key driver for attracting jobs and investment to Indiana. The Secretary and CEO of the newly formed Indiana Destination Development Corporation, Elaine Beadle, has more on her agency's mission. There she is in the Inside Indiana Business Social Media Lounge, presented by Star Commercial Banking, Indiana born for Indiana business. Well, since 2017, Elaine Beadle has served as president of the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, the state's lead economic development agency. She has moved, though, to a new role as CEO of the newly created Indiana Destination Development Corporation. I'm pleased to welcome her back to the show to learn her vision and goals of this new agency. As always, Elaine, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Okay, Indiana Destination Development Corporation, the legislature, the state legislature approved this in the last session. Give us a thumbnail description, kind of a quasi-government agency, what this is all about.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the legislation came through to create the quasi-entity for tourism. But the governor and the lieutenant governor have been thinking for a couple of years now, how do we really promote Indiana better than that? So they have really expanded from just tourism to really branding and promoting the state, really telling Indiana's authentic story to help businesses be attracted here, to bring talent and retain our talent, to bring more students to go to colleges and universities here, as well as visitors. So it's a bigger package than that. And being a quasi-government agency gives us the opportunity to really collaborate more with the private sector, and that's what we'll be doing.
Why is it so important? We talk a lot about it on this show, but telling the Indiana story, what's happening here in every corner of the state. It's something as a state I don't think we've done a very good job of doing over the years.
Right, that's what kind of makes this so exciting. You know, really, we're a startup entity to try and do just that, because what we're finding is when CEOs try to recruit talent, particularly that mid-level talent from outside the state, the response they often get is, why would I come to Indiana? Now, we know it's pretty obviously it's not necessarily a bad perception, it's just no perception. So we've got to tell our positive story about what it is to be here in Indiana, because we have so many individuals who have come here from other places, probably for a job, maybe even reluctantly, but once they've gotten here, they love it, and they don't want to leave, and they're retiring here. So I mean, I think the story's there. We just have to get it out and really talk about that quality of life that we have here that I think is so appealing, but we just have to get the story out.
And the private sector is going to be a big part of this, right? You're going to look for partnerships and alliances with the private sector.
Absolutely, because you know almost everyone's a stakeholder in this. I mean, if it's a corporation trying to recruit talent, if it's individuals staying here looking for jobs, whatever it might be, they all have an interest. And if we do it right, everybody will win from this. So we're anxious to work with our corporate partners as well as our other community partners that are already out there.
And it should mention too, I think there's real opportunity opportunity here for benefit to not just the metro areas, but small town Indiana, so a bigger swath
Absolutely.
of the state.
This is really statewide, corner to corner. We need to look at everything that we've got to offer and really put a megaphone to it. Because we've got some great small towns and small cities that are doing an awful lot to spruce themselves up, to have some great quality of life. And I think it may be even appealing to a lot of millennials who are looking for having that quieter life, but they can still work remotely or get close to a larger metropolitan or have businesses right there. So we're doing it for all of those reasons, to bring business there, to bring talent there, and to really help raise the community as well.
Very quickly, we have about 15 seconds, but I know you've got a survey you want to push
Right.
out to get some feedback from Hoosiers.
It's a simple 5-minute survey that anyone can take. It has tracks for business, for community individuals, for just residents, and just to give us your opinion. 5 minutes is all it's going to take. It's a pretty simple survey.
All right. Elaine Beadle, the CEO of the Indiana Destination Development Corporation. I know we'll be having you on a lot more in the future to talk about this. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Still ahead, the second part of our series on an Indiana business with a huge global footprint. We'll take you inside the Heritage Group Accelerator, powered by Techstars, and how it's helping entrepreneurs and startups from all over the world. Some of those may be setting up shop in Indiana. Well, last week we gave you a rare look inside the Heritage Group on the northwest side of Indianapolis. It's a multi-generational family-owned business with more than 5,000 employees around the globe, business dealings around the globe as well. Now, the company is also laser focused on innovation. And this week, in part 2 of our series, we look at how the Heritage Group Accelerator, powered by Techstars, is helping 10 startups from around the world take their companies to the next level. Managing Director Lisa Mitchell has more on the inaugural class of companies, some of which are planning to relocate to Indiana, and how they are bringing the future of tech to the state.
Techstars is a company that's been around since 2007. We have 47 locations around the globe, and our job, as we see it in partnering with corporations, is to bring our global network that helps entrepreneurs succeed to them. So relative to our role with the Heritage Group, it was in the early days listening and understanding what are the kinds of problems that they'd like to solve in and around their portfolio of companies, and how can we find companies that could help solve those kinds of problems.
So you found some companies, right? 10 companies
Yes.
from all over
Yep.
the world. Give us
Yes.
kind of a snapshot of the companies that have been housed here and accelerating, if you will.
Sure. Yes, we have, relative to Europe, we have a company from Estonia, we have a company from Germany. In both cases, they are addressing really big problems like how do we get toxins out of the materials that we are currently using. In another case, it's how do we electrify roads of the future. One of the things that Amy Schumacher had said to me when we spoke early on was the world is revolving around us with electric vehicles of all kinds, not just cars, but trucks and forklifts and everything else. And what could we as a company or corporation look to do, because we build roads and bridges? How can we as a company figure out how roads and bridges can actually help propel forward getting to automated electric vehicles?
Yep.
We have multiple companies from across the US, from San Diego, from Oklahoma, as well as the East Coast, and all of them come here because A, they want to work the playbook of Techstars in terms of how can we help accelerate their companies, but the other is relative to the Heritage Group, how can we take advantage of the expertise that's available in the myriad of companies across the Heritage Group portfolio and learn about how that can help us do proof of concepts, build pricing models, and work with other customers.
So these are big global issues that are being focused on right here in Indiana.
They were already being focused on. We're just doing it in a bigger way. We're bringing hard tech to Indianapolis.
What about the community and corporate support that you're seeing here in Indiana?
Yeah, so a big part of the process relative to Techstars is we bring in about 100 mentors to work with the companies. And in all cases where we have a corporate partner, we're obviously looking at bringing in executives from that corporate partner. And in this case, it's even more unique because there's so many. But in addition to that, because of the kinds of companies that we have, it was really important to reach out to the Department of Transportation, to Cummins Engine, to, I mean, there's a number of, I would call it both corporate and experts in the community. Purdue has been a lifesaver in terms of both people that are doing research in Purdue on topics that our companies are working with, but also we will be announcing some pilots that we're running that, frankly, I don't think that we would have been able to do without the collaborations that we've had with corporations, universities, and government officials in the state of Indiana.
Yeah. You've been around the country in a number of roles around innovation and entrepreneurship. Your take on the landscape here in Indianapolis and more broadly in Indiana when it comes to innovation and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so when I came to Indianapolis, I knew one person. Luckily for me, that one person was Scott Dorsey. So I knew that there was a broad and deep expertise relative to B2B SaaS in this community. I have been amazed at the opportunity to come in and focus on what we call hard tech. So most of my cohort is not B2B SaaS. I only have one. Everything else are companies that require a significant amount of funding and resources to scale. But the support from the community relative to hard tech has been amazing. I'm finding a increased focus on hard tech investing across the United States. And because I think of the work that we did long ago in Startup America and Rise of the Rest, no one cares anymore where you're physically located when they want to write you a check. They want a good founder, they want a great company. And if we can surround that with expertise in a community, people are coming to the table and willing to write checks. So we're gonna, in my mind, we're gonna build 3 great pillars here in Indianapolis. You've got your B2B SaaS pillar. You guys have amazing amount of engineering talent that most communities probably outside of California and Texas don't have. And the third one is building expertise around hard tech. So this should, you know, help all boats rise in the great community of Indianapolis.
Coming up next week, we'll tell you about the Heritage Group's newest division, HG Ventures, investing in innovative companies in Indiana and beyond, and its first investment, 120 Water Audit in Zionsville. That's coming up next week. This week on the show, the holiday season is a time for giving, and the Indianapolis Colts and Versity Blood Center are hoping that many will consider donating the gift of life. Learn more about the 20th Bleed Blue Blood Drive and how you can help. Also, Marian University says it is shaping the next generation of educators, from recruiting more African-American male teachers to targeting veterans and active duty military into considering careers in teaching. Those stories and a lot more coming up. Well, Indiana's blood supply dwindles during the holiday season, so Versity Blood Center of Indiana is fighting back by gearing up for the largest single-day blood drive in the state. Business of Health reporter Kylie Valletta has more. Kylie.
Thanks, Gary. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the Bleed Blue Blood Drive, hosted by the Indianapolis Colts on December 21st. Lots of perks make it fun for donors, but it's also serious business for Versity Blood Center, which supplies blood for 80 hospitals in Indiana. Here to tell us more is Penny Schroeder, Area Vice President and Director of Donor Services at Versity. Thanks for coming to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
I want to talk first about your name change in case people don't recognize it. Formerly Indiana Blood Center, now Versity. Give us a quick overview of just the huge role that Versity plays in supplying blood to Indiana.
So as a community blood supplier, we supply blood to over 80 hospitals across the state. We need to see 560 donors a day here in Indiana to meet the needs of the patients that we serve. Our blood can be found in every hospital or emergency room across the state. O-negative blood is always in short supply, so there is no substitute for blood. So we really play a vital role in stabilizing the healthcare system and the lives of patients in Indiana.
So the Colts blood drive is coming up, not this weekend, but following weekend,
Right.
December 21st, right before Christmas. Why are the holidays such a critical time to collect blood?
Right. During the holidays, people go on vacations, so donating blood sometimes isn't on the top of mind. So for patients across the state, blood is always needed. So during the holidays, we really ask people to roll up their sleeves, really put blood donation on the list because people are going on vacations, schools are out of session, and then you always have flu season, which always hits hard, so there's always illness to battle too.
And is that a good drive to catch some of those O-negative people that you're...
It's a great drive to catch some of the O-negative people. Well, we need all blood types. We do, for our donors that are O-negative, we will try and make the most of their donation that day because O-negative blood is always in short supply, but we do make the most of everybody that shows up that day, so we'd really appreciate it.
And it's at Lucas Oil Stadium, just steps from the field, so really a lot of fun for everyone involved. Talk about the importance of corporate philanthropy to Versity.
We partner with all businesses across the state. We cannot thank the Indianapolis Colts enough for their support of the mission of Versity. Our mission is to save patients' lives and to really enable our healthcare partners to succeed locally here in Indiana and nationally. So the support of companies like the Colts really helps to ensure that the blood supply is stable, and we'll partner with any organization whose mission really matches ours.
And we mentioned this is the biggest single-day blood drive in Indiana, but actually the biggest single-day blood drive in all 5 states that you serve.
It is. It's a lot of fun. It's a day where we all come together. We shut down all of our sites. We bring all of our folks down to Indianapolis. We bring in 100 blood beds. We bring in a couple mobile blood buses. We pull them right inside the stadium, and the field is open. We go out, you can throw the football around while your friends or family save lives inside.
A really big undertaking, though, logistics-wise, I would think.
It is. It takes about 350 people to pull the day together. We've planned for it every year. We do a dry run the afternoon before. We load in all of our equipment. We monitor the temperature throughout the day, so it is a huge undertaking, but it's one of our most fun events of the year. We have everybody in one spot, a lot of fellowship, and we're all there to save lives.
And it's such a big drive. Does it help get public awareness about your new name and that you're the same place you've always been?
It does. So every year, our partnership with the Colts and the Bleed Blue Blood Drive really does help to raise awareness about blood donation. And we are, as Versity Blood Center of Indiana, we're the same blood center that we've always been. We've been in the community since 1952. You'll see the same faces when you come in to donate. We're a nonprofit, and we're here to serve.
And just a few seconds left, but you don't have to be the size of the Colts, right, to host a blood drive. Small businesses, too.
Yep, small businesses. We partner with all levels of business. We'll work with your company to really make sure that we can match missions and save lives.
Okay, Penny, well, thank you so much for being here and telling us about it. Not this weekend, but next weekend.
That's right.
Head
We'll
out
see you
there.
next weekend.
All right.
Thank you.
Gary, back to you.
All right, Kylie, thank you. Well, Marian University has launched a program that targets veterans and active duty military personnel to consider teaching as a profession. Plus, it has strengthened its effort to recruit more African-American male teachers. And a federal grant will help fund its groundbreaking teacher residency program, one of the first of its kind in the country. In our Eye on Education segment this week, pleased to welcome back to the show the Dean of the Fred Klipsch Educators College, Kenneth Britt, and UNCF Regional Development Director, Andrea Neely, to learn more about those programs and their impact. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Gary.
Kenneth, I'll start with you on the Klipsch Educators College. I remember when the college launched in 2017, so not that long ago, a lot of activity, $37 million in fundraising. You've had a lot going on in those 2+ years.
We've been very fortunate since we launched in 2017 in this groundbreaking effort to really recruit a more talented and more diverse teaching workforce that mirrors the student population. Our young people deserve better, and we wanted to take a leadership role on that talent development pipeline. So we're excited about the success that we've had. We're humbled about the partnerships that we do have, the work that UNCF has done and continues to do in raising awareness, and the advocacy is really important.
Well, let's talk about, when we talk about diversity, and in particular strengthening the pipeline, getting more African-American male teachers in that teaching pipeline. Your view of that effort and what it's all about.
Well, when you think about it, first you look at research and you look at the impact that African-American male teachers, particularly teachers of color, can have not only on students of color, but the impact that they have on white students as well. It's very, very dramatic, and we need to make sure that we do a better job of identifying those African-American males to come into the teaching profession. I mean, you think about it. I mean, there aren't very many students who are able to go through their 13 years of K-12 education and have been blessed and been educated by an African-American male teacher. And that's just clearly unacceptable. So we really need to do a much better job on that side, and again, partners with UNCF and others that allow us to have success.
Andrea, please kind of elaborate. This is nothing new for UNCF. This is part of your DNA, so to speak, for many, many years in this effort. How will your relationship with Marian really extend that reach?
Well, with UNCF, 75 years young, is that we're focused on ensuring that we are providing opportunities for all students, first generation of color, to be successful. And we understand that that's going to start to the K through 12 space. As previously said, if a student doesn't see someone like them, they're going to be challenged. Well, UNCF is engaged with communities across the country, from Memphis to New Orleans, in the K through 12 of advocacy with one goal in mind: advocating to ensure that if it's in the classroom, those students have the ability to see someone just like them, being able to understand that they're going to be challenged differently when they are supported by an African-American male teacher to be successful. They're not going to be dealing with anything less than the expectation to be successful. And so UNCF has programs that we're currently doing with Xavier University, one of our member institutions, which is focused on graduating students of color in the field of education and teachers for that reason. Because when you see students who are in classrooms that have like-minded people that can support them, expulsion is going to be less than what we see, because now you understand that child differently, and that child trusts you.
What do you see as the opportunity here in Indianapolis, in particular with the relationship with Marian, to really enhance that pipeline?
Removing the barriers of paying for an education, and that's going to be key. With the grant that Marian has, it's going to give us the ability to show there's a great demand and need for teachers, but also dollars available to support students who want to become those teachers that we need them to be, and to be in the classroom. I think that's a great opportunity. 9 times out of 10 is removing that financial barrier and having a system that you're going to be successful in, and then really be a part of the solution of what you see there's a great need for.
Kenneth, I want to ask you too, we don't have a lot of time left, but the focus on veterans, military, and getting those in teaching, especially into urban areas, and how that's playing out.
Yeah, we're really excited to launch our program in partnership with the Indianapolis Public Schools to focus on bringing veterans to the classroom. The value in terms of their leadership training that they've received will then go into our classrooms and serve our students very well. We're really excited about that partnership launch in 2020.
All right, lots going on at the Klipsch Educators College, campus of Marian University. Kenneth Britt, thank you for joining us. Andrea Neely, UNCF, thank you, and thanks for all the organization does as well. Appreciate you both being here.
Thanks for allowing us.
All right. Well, the Purdue University Board of Trustees this week approved holding student room and board rates steady for the 2020-2021 academic year on the West Lafayette campus. This marks the 8th straight year for steady, in some cases lower rates, according to the university. Addressing the reoccurring shortage of student dormitory rooms, trustees also gave the okay to the Division of Student Life to lease 79 rooms at Aspire at Discovery Park. Purdue says a total of 1,300 new beds will become available with the opening of 2 new dorms. Still ahead, our insiders will sound off on some of the week's top stories, but first, it is almost tip-off time for a classic holiday tournament at the world's largest high school field house. That's not the only tie Newcastle has to Indiana's proud and cherished basketball tradition, and Bill Benner has more when we return. Here's what's making news now around Indiana. In Lake County, Maryville-based White Lodging Services has pulled the plug on plans to develop the 40-acre site where the Star Plaza Theater once stood. Last year, the company proposed a $365 million complex, the Farms at Crossroad Commons, which would have included 4 hotels, an event center, and numerous restaurants. Our partners at the Times of Northwest Indiana report the plan stalled when the Lake County Council pushed back at a $75 million incentive package White Lodging was asking for. In Southwest Indiana, Indianapolis Power and Light Company will soon retire 2 coal-fired units at its Petersburg generating station in Pike County. It's part of the utility's integrated resource plan. IPL says it will begin looking for an energy replacement to fill the capacity gap. Once those 2 are retired, that could come in the form of a combination of wind, solar, and storage resources. Just 9 months after breaking ground, Lafayette-based Subaru of Indiana Automotive has opened its new $2 million plus technical training center. The project includes classrooms, an enhanced computer lab, and simulated factory floor. It also features robots, assembly line simulators, and hands-on workspace for the advanced internship in manufacturing program. The first and second rounds of the 2022 NCAA Men's Division I Basketball Championship will be played in Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis rather than Cincinnati as originally planned. According to a statement from the NCAA, the switch is being made to allow for additional time for ongoing renovations at the newly named Heritage Bank Center in Cincinnati. The NCAA says Cincinnati will have the opportunity to bid on future tournament rounds. Well, it's an in-between the holidays hoops tradition and attracts some of the very best girls and boys high school basketball teams in Indiana. Bill Benner has more in this week's Inside Indiana Sports. Bill.
Thanks, Kerry. For the 43rd time for the boys and the 36th go-around for the girls, the Raymond James Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame Classic will take place December 28th and 27th and 28th at the famed Newcastle Fieldhouse, the Hall of Fame's neighbor. And joining us today to preview the Classic as well as discuss the recently announced Class of 2020 Hall of Fame inductees is Executive Director Chris May. And Chris, welcome, always to see you. Always nice to see you coming over from Newcastle. I didn't realize, and this event had been around for so long. It started in 1977 at Hinkle Fieldhouse.
Absolutely. Over 40 years of high school basketball tradition in this tournament. This will be the 30th consecutive year it's played at the Newcastle Fieldhouse. Great teams, great players, and we're proud of this year's lineup as well.
Yeah, and generally you do. I mean, it's become a kind of a, for the top teams, top players, they want to be part of this event.
These are players you're going to see on the college landscape and the professional landscape throughout the history of our tournament. Players like Steve Alford and Damon Bailey and Glenn Robinson and Sean Kemp and so on and so forth.
And that Romeo guy, too,
and
right?
Amongst current NBA players, a lineup of Trey Lyles and Romeo Langford and Cody Zeller and Gary Harris and on and on and on. So yes, a lot of great tradition and teams that are likely going to make long runs in the state tournament and state championship caliber teams that are coming to Newcastle.
Yeah, well, in the boys field, you got the defending 3A state champs Silver Creek. They're taking on Heritage Hill. And then number 1, Lawrence Central, may be replaced by number 1. Taking on Lafayette Jeff.
Yeah, all 4 of those teams are in the top 20 of the all-class high school boys state poll, and they've all got great returning talent. Between our girls and boys lineup combined, we think we've got at least 10, maybe a dozen Division I future college basketball players. So each of those teams stocked with talent and very highly ranked and anticipating their appearances.
Yeah, and on the girls' side, Brownsburg versus Penn, again, great programs. And the current number 1, Crown Point from up in northern Indiana, taking on Salem.
And all 4 of those girls' teams are in the top 14 in the state poll this week, so they're having great seasons, great starts for them.
December always a busy, well, you're always busy, Chris, but a particularly busy month because you roll out the 2020 inductees, and not to single out anybody among all those greats, but among the names that people would recognize. Lyndon Jones from Marian, a great player.
Yeah, his place in Indiana basketball history is for Marian, the high school state championships of 1985, 86, and 87. He's one of only 3 men to start on 3 consecutive one-class high school state championship teams.
And Alan Darner will be on from the coaching side.
Great coaching success. Anderson Highland, Pike, a couple of championships at Pike as well. Yes, representing the coaching side.
And you mentioned before we went on the air, because of the Hall of Fame Classic, it's the 2 biggest days of the year for the actual Hall of Fame museum.
The museum will be abuzz, especially in between sessions. We're formatted. We start at 11 o'clock during the day session, 6 o'clock at night, and that gives folks a chance to come to the museum, see what's new, see what's different, and regale in all the great Indiana basketball history that we have on display.
And among the new things you have is it's called the Hoosier Hardwood Photo Project. And you've got a couple of veteran photographers who have taken classic pictures of some of the classic gyms around the state of Indiana.
Yes, Michael Keating and Chris Smith are retired professional photographers. They've spent the past 6 years photographing gymnasiums, both currently in use for high schools, but also schools that closed to consolidation, people that have kept gyms standing and in good condition all over the state of Indiana. And it's been immensely popular. We have 96 of their large color photos backlit in our gallery, and it's been a huge draw.
Okay, 2 things as we wrap up. Number 1, if you want to be in attendance, you want people in attendance at Newcastle, how do you get tickets?
It's an important fundraiser for us. Tickets are online at hoopshall.com, also through the participating schools.
But if you can't make it, you just signed a new agreement through the IHSAA, and locally Channel 23 will be carrying all the games.
We certainly want people in the stands, but if they can't, in today's digital world, we're online, IHSA TV app, smart TVs, smart devices, also social media, Facebook, Twitter, and with Circle City Broadcasting on MyIndy 23, all 8 games live on the air.
All right, Chris May from the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame, folks, we're Hoosiers. The Hall of Fame is us, so support it. Thanks, Chris.
Thank
Gary,
you.
Back to you.
All right, Bill, thank you. Well, coming up, our insiders getting warmed up to sound off on Celadon's sudden closing, the governor's 2020 agenda, and a lot more. There they are in the Inside Indiana Business Social Media Lounge, presented by Star Commercial Banking, Indiana born for Indiana business. Well, each week, a group of insiders joins me to offer perspective on some of the week's top stories. This week, sounding off on Celadon, filing for bankruptcy and closing operations, the governor's 2020 agenda, and White Lodging's decision in Northwest Indiana to scrap plans for the former Star Plaza Theater site in Maryville. Joining me this week on The Insiders, pleased to be joined by 16 Tech Chief Financial Officer Robert Herzog. Also, Robin Winston, principal for the Winston Terrell Group, and the head of school at the International School is Elizabeth Head. Welcome one and all to the Insiders for another edition.
Thank you.
And we begin with a bit of a downer, if you will, news this week that on the one hand, people weren't necessarily shocked at because of the issues and the problems Celadon has been having in recent years financially. But bankruptcy filing, immediate closure at Celadon Group, a trucking company that had grown into $1 billion company but had fallen on hard times.
Yeah, I mean, just sad on a number of different levels. Obviously, economically for the drivers, the administrative people in town, such a legacy that Steve Russell and his family started here that now is going to really have to work through this. I thought the mayor's statement when he came out, I think today or yesterday, was really well timed, and hopefully, especially the truckers will be able to find jobs with other really competitive industry, be able to catch on with some of the other truckload lines across the country.
Tough any time, but 2 weeks before Christmas, 4,000 employees, most of them drivers, looking for jobs now.
They're looking for jobs, but luckily they're going to be picked up by other people in the industry.
Yeah.
Motor Truck Association said the jobs are there. You know, the other part of this is they opened up the US 35 corridor to bring it from Mexico to to Canada. So it just made that work. Russell was a benchmark in our community in so many ways, but I hope that they can rebound, and I think those workers will find jobs in other factories.
Elizabeth, and you, as we were talking off camera, you mentioned the international component here because they were really innovators in opening up Mexico and up to Canada as well, but opening up those international markets.
You know, what's really unfortunate is the 1980s when Indiana really began its initiatives in the international global market, trying to recruit foreign investment. This was a company that was at the forefront of seeing those borders as something that we wanted to be part of here in Indiana. So it's really unfortunate that due to a few bad actors that we're in the situation we are. We have to keep pushing those international initiatives forward for the state.
And Robin mentioned it too, but Steve Russell, the guy who founded the company, moved it here as a small company from New York City to Indianapolis. grew a great company, gave so much back to the community, passed away a few years ago, and it's really tough to think about what he built up that is no longer here.
Yeah, it is. The good news is the hopefully the negativity of this will pass, and workers will find other avenues. And 6 months and a year from now, we can all look back on Steve's and his family's legacy and remember how important it was to Indiana.
Yep. Going to the northwest part of the state, White Lodging, I mentioned that in the introduction, had announced earlier, excuse me, big plans, $300+ million plans for development. Pulled those plans, very high-profile property up there, Robin.
Well, I mean, right along 30, right there in Maryville. We've all been to the Star Plaza, de facto convention center for Northwest Indiana. But it's on too vital of a corner to be ignored. I mean, I think you're going to find that this is going to lead to development, could even lead to the development that they didn't envision with their initial plans. What you also find out of this is that Northwest Indiana continues to be a juggernaut in economic development, and I believe people are going to look at that.
But is there someone with the deep enough pockets like the White family to do it?
Don't underestimate the Collins family, Luke Oil, the folks that are up there that are they've got a very good presence. Tom Collins and his family do a very good job. Also, Maryville is growing, so you may find more incentives that might come their way, but not to the tune of $75 million.
You know, unfortunately, the last time I was on here with you, we talked specifically about how that TIF had been approved for the project and how this was going to be the biggest game changer in 5 decades for that area. Now to see that fall through, we really need an owner to step forward and breathe life into that project to make this happen for the Northwest.
Yeah, very, very high-profile property. Also, Robert, in Northwest Indiana, I think this is reflective of the change in the economy from traditional old line industry, the Hammond Digital Center taking shape, big data center that's being built and is progressing along. That can have impact in that part of the state.
One of those quiet industries that you don't see or hear a lot about, but we all know in the technology world we live today, these kind of data centers are more and more just running in the back office of what happens of our economy. So it's great, and I was really happy to see that that's taken place because you're going to see more of that activity over the years to come, and it's nice that such a site was able to grab a hold of that.
Yep. Also, on the airport scene in Indianapolis International Airport continues to get accolades seemingly every year as North America's best airport. This week announcing this is a seasonal flight, but another flight to direct flight, a nonstop flight from Indianapolis to Seattle, the second flight to that tech-rich market. That is a positive, and it could open up some international destinations from Seattle, I would assume, as well.
You know, I'm new to Indianapolis, and all I know is that every month I find new developments that bring more attraction, attract talent here, keep putting Indiana on the world map. And this tech, the connections, bringing people in, sending people out, all that does is revitalize even more what's going on internationally and nationally. Shout out to Mario Rodriguez and his team at the International Airport. Another win for that airport.
Doing a lot of work out there, yeah.
It's just tremendous for us. Keep in mind that Maria Cantwell, U.S. Senator, is from here, U.S. Senator from Washington, from here, very much involved in the tech industry. So this is a coup to help land us. She wrote letters of support for this. Alaska Airlines could also be a launching point for trips to Alaska, going out there. So it's just all positive again.
Yep. A lot of news on the education front in the week just ended. Purdue announcing that they're keeping room and board rates steady on the West Lafayette campus. I think some of the regional campuses may be increasing, but in West Lafayette, I think it's the 8th straight year keeping rates steady, getting a lot of national attention for what's going on there.
You know, as an educational leader, I can really appreciate the complexity that goes into managing tuition and fees. When revenue is generated primarily from those types of fees, and the fact that they can respect and maintain those prices for their families shows that they're really keeping students and families as top priority while also managing the operational efficiencies at such a large institution that they have to balance well. So kudos to them for being able to balance those priorities and keep families first in their decision making.
Yeah, I mean, incredibly well said, and I agree with everything there. It's more of a legacy of, the governor in Purdue and Mitch Daniels being able to really balance that leadership challenge of keeping those costs low while maintaining, the stability of pricing structure for families is really important.
Also want to mention news from IU trustees approving this week a plan that would essentially lessen the impact or eliminate the impact of standardized test ACT, SAT exams for getting into the school.
Test optional is the word on the street in higher education and high schools today. We're talking about this every day in our schools, especially with the booming programs of international baccalaureate across the world known as the gold standard curriculum. You cannot measure students' abilities on one test. And so when we focus on one test that supposedly tells a university what a student's capable of, we're seriously misleading or misguiding the true capacity of a student. So this is exciting because when we think of international baccalaureate, for example, at the international school, it's inquiry-based, it's critical thinking, it's problem solving. That can't be tested in one single assessment. So this is a great move across the United States. Proud of IU to take the step.
Yep.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add, it helps incredibly with equity and diversity because those students over the length of time that they're in can prove through test scores to be able to get to those, and not always having the means to spend money on an ACT or SAT prep for the last year of high school. That's what's driving.
I like the fact that it's going to put more of an emphasis on your high school education.
Exactly.
We need to put more revenues into that. We've been saying it over and over again. If we do that, then I think people will begin to realize high school education does matter because it's a precursor to going to college. Okay?
All right, we'll end on that. Robin Winston, as always, thank you. Elizabeth Head and Robert Herzog, thank you as well. And we'll be right back after this. Coming up next week, Indiana will host a global economic summit next year. Indiana Secretary of Commerce Jim Schellinger will explain the importance in studio. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm Gary Dick. Go out and make it a successful week.
Inside Indiana Business with Gary Dick is a production of Grow Indiana Media Ventures with support from WFYI Productions.